Hey, what's up, my friend? Welcome to Awareness Vibes 2.0. I'm Kai Rivers. It's funny, we live in a time where people chase wealth like it's oxygen and completely forget to breathe while doing it. So before we start, let's breathe together. Inhale through the nose. Hold it for a second. Exhale slowly. That's it. You didn't earn that breath. You didn't buy it. That's real wealth. The kind that can't be taken away. So let's talk about the new wealth. Not the kind you post about, but the kind that sits quietly in your chest when you wake up in the morning. The kind of wealth that lets you smile when life's messy. The kind that doesn't depend on your Wi-Fi signal or your wallet balance. That's awareness. Alan Watts once said, "Money is a way of measuring wealth, but it's not wealth itself." And I used to think, cool quote, but tell that to my landlord. But years later, it made sense. Because money's the menu. Awareness is the meal. And most of us, we're just staring at menus. Starving. Let me sip my coffee real quick. You ever notice how coffee tastes different when you're actually here for it? Like not on your phone, not half thinking about the next thing, just here. That's awareness in action. A few years back, I thought I had it figured out. I was earning more, achieving more, checking off the goals. But I was also waking up with that weird heaviness, that quiet anxiety that doesn't scream, it hums, like your soul's buffering. And I do what everyone does, distract myself, check emails, scroll, buy something I didn't need, refresh my bank app, like peace was hiding in those numbers. But it never worked, because peace doesn't come from control. It comes from clarity, and clarity only comes from awareness. Eckhart Tolle once said, "Awareness is the greatest agent for change." That line changed how I see everything, because you can't change what you don't see. You can't fix a pattern you're still unconscious of. And most of us are just sleepwalking through habits, mental, emotional, financial, that we never stop to question. So what is awareness really? It's that quiet watcher inside you, the one who notices your thoughts without becoming them. It's the pause between stimulus and reaction, that tiny space where you get to choose. And that space, that's your real freedom. Not the I quit my job and moved to Bali kind. The inner freedom, where you're no longer a prisoner of your own thoughts. That's the kind of wealth that doesn't need markets to rise. I had a friend, Aaron. Successful guy, on paper. 6 figures, nice car, nice place, the full highlight reel. But he called me one night and said, "Man, I don't even feel alive anymore." I said, "When's the last time you did nothing?" He laughed. "Nothing? Bro, I don't even know what that means." So I told him 10 minutes every morning. No phone, no music, just sit. At first, he said it was torture. But 2 weeks later, he called me again. Same life, same job, but his voice was lighter. He said nothing changed, but somehow everything did. That's the magic. Awareness doesn't erase your problems, it just takes the noise out of them. You ever notice that? When you're fully present, even the ordinary feels sacred. The sound of your fridge humming, the warmth of your mug, the light hitting your wall in the morning. Awareness is what turns existence into experience. Let me grab another sip. Yeah, see, this right here, that's presence. Even a moment like this, small, quiet, unremarkable, it's full of life if you're here for it. And maybe that's the new definition of wealth. Not how much you own, but how much of the moment you can hold. Hold up. Let me stretch my back a bit, chuckles Flea. You ever realize being human comes with all these weird sound effects? You stand up and it's like click, click, creak. Anyway, this feels like a good spot to pause for a bit. Let's call this a little timeout. Go grab some water, or coffee, or just look out the window for a minute. Don't worry, we'll keep this talk going in a bit. All right, where were we? Awareness. The kind of wealth you can't flex, but you can feel. It's funny, we talk so much about financial literacy, but hardly anyone talks about emotional literacy. We learn how to earn, how to spend, how to save, but nobody really teaches us how to sit with money, how to face the fear, the shame, the guilt that's attached to it. That's part of the new wealth, too. Not just what you earn, but how you relate to it. When you think about it, Money's just an agreement between humans. It's an idea. It's energy that moves because people believe it moves. Awareness, on the other hand, that's pure reality. You don't need anyone's belief for awareness to exist. It's the constant background behind everything you do. And when you start to really see that, your relationship with money, success, and even time changes completely. You stop chasing. You start aligning. Let me grab a sip of coffee for this one. I remember one morning I was journaling and I wrote down this simple sentence. Money is the shadow of my state of mind. Man, that hit hard. Because every time I acted out of fear of losing, fear of missing out, I lost clarity. But when I acted from awareness, from peace, somehow the right opportunities found me. So yeah, awareness is not just a spiritual idea, it's practical. It shapes your reality. Think about this. You ever get paid and for a few hours, everything feels good? Like, finally relief. And then the next day, boom, stress again. It's like happiness with an expiration date. That's what happens when peace depends on circumstances. But awareness gives you a kind of baseline calm. You're still human. You still get anxious, sure, but there's this quiet knowing underneath that says, I can handle it. That right there, that's wealth. You know what else awareness gives you? Gratitude. Not the hashtag gratitude kind. I'm talking about real, unfiltered appreciation for simple things, like how sunlight hits your floor, or the way your breath feels when you slow it down. It's not about ignoring the hard stuff. It's about seeing everything clearly without letting the noise own you. And honestly, gratitude is the most underrated currency there is. The more you spend it, the richer you get. Let me share something. A while back, I was sitting at this small cafe, cheap table, cracked mug, sunlight pouring in through the window, and I had this thought. I've had fancier coffee in my life, but I've never enjoyed one more than this. And that's when it clicked. Happiness doesn't scale with price tags. It scales with presence. You can't buy the feeling of being here. And most people spend their lives trading now for later, saving all their joy for the weekend or for when things finally calm down. But life doesn't owe you a later. Awareness says, this moment is it. There's a quote from Tolle that always lands. Realize deeply that the present moment is all you ever have. Think about that. The past, just memory. The future, imagination. All that's real is this, right now. And the crazy part, when you really live now, you actually make better decisions for later, because your actions come from clarity, not fear. Let's talk about fear for a second, because that's the thing that steals the most awareness. Fear is like a fog. It makes you see problems that aren't even there. Sometimes we call it planning, but really it's just worry in disguise. You can plan consciously or plan anxiously. Same action, totally different energy. And your energy? That's the invisible part of wealth people don't talk about. You can have two people doing the same job, earning the same income, but one's burnt out, the other's peaceful. The difference isn't effort, it's awareness. Let me lean back for a second. You know, it's strange. The more I talk about awareness, the more I realize it's not something you get. It's something you remember. Kids have it naturally. You watch a kid eat ice cream, that's pure awareness. They're not thinking about tomorrow or their email inbox. They're just there. And somewhere along the way, we trade that for goals, for validation, for being productive. But all that's supposed to serve life, not replace it. You know, I once met this older man, retired fisherman, weathered hands, slow smile. He told me, son, I don't have much money, but I've got time, peace, and a quiet porch. That's enough. And he wasn't saying that to sound wise. He genuinely meant it. You could feel the truth in his eyes. That's when I realized wealth isn't measured in what you own, but in how little you need to feel whole. And awareness helps you see that. Because when you're aware, you stop needing more. You start noticing more. Let me check this mug again. Still warm, still good. You know, I think this might be my favorite metaphor. Awareness is like coffee. You can talk about it all day, but until you sit, sip, and taste it, you'll never really know what it means. And that's what this is all about. Not theory, not quotes, just practice, presence. If you're listening to this right now, maybe pause and feel your own breath again. Notice your shoulders. Notice the air in the room. Notice the simple fact that you're alive. That's the start of the new wealth. Right here. Hold up, I think I need a little time out. My coffee's getting cold, and honestly, I kind of want to just sit for a moment and enjoy the silence. Let's pick it up again after this pause. You can take one too, maybe stretch, maybe stare out a window. We'll keep the conversation flowing in a minute. That's better. Warm coffee again? You know what's funny? Every time I take that first sip after a pause, it reminds me nothing really needs to rush. Everything's already happening at the speed it should. That's awareness in action right there. And speaking of that, let's talk about abundance. You see, most people hear the word abundance and they think money, or followers, or success stories on social media. But real abundance, man, it's quieter than that. It's not about having more, it's about feeling full. You can have $5 and still feel abundant, and you can have 5 million and still feel like you're missing something. Because abundance starts in the mind, not the bank. There's this thing Sadhguru said that stuck with me. He said, if you resist what is happening, you suffer. If you accept it, you transcend it. And that's a whole masterclass in 2 sentences. Because resistance drains your energy, acceptance releases it. And when you're not wasting energy fighting reality, you start creating from peace, not pressure. And that energy, that's where abundance grows. Let me lean back a second. There was this one week where everything went wrong. Deadlines missed, plans fell apart. My computer even crashed mid-recording. And you know how that feels, right? That why now moment. But that day, instead of reacting, I caught myself. I just paused. And this little thought came in. Okay, maybe life's giving me a reset instead of a setback. That tiny shift from frustration to curiosity changed everything. Because when you shift your state, you shift your story. And when your story changes, your actions follow. That's awareness doing its quiet magic. Let's talk about something most people don't realize. Abundance is not created by effort alone. It's created by energy. You can grind 14 hours a day, but if your energy is frantic or fearful, you'll just attract more chaos. But when you act from awareness, you're calm, present, grounded, you attract clarity. Opportunities align because you're aligned. It's almost spooky how it works. Alan Watts had this beautiful analogy. He said, you don't look at the ocean and say, why aren't there straight waves? The waves are supposed to be wild. Life's the same way. It moves in curves, ups and downs. When you stop trying to control the tide, you start surfing it. And surfing, that's just awareness in motion. Let me share a story, a personal one. I used to have this habit of checking my phone the moment I woke up. Emails, notifications, markets, all that noise. And by 8 a.m., my mind was already spinning. One morning, I decided, no phone for the first hour. Just coffee, silence, and a walk. The first few days were brutal. My mind kept saying, you're missing out. Something's happening. But by the end of the week, I realized I wasn't missing anything. I was finally arriving. That hour of awareness changed how the whole day felt. And guess what? I started thinking clearer. Even made better financial decisions. Not because I tried harder, but because I was calmer. Awareness sharpens intuition. That inner voice that's usually drowned out by overthinking, it starts speaking clearer. You begin to feel when something's right or off, before the logic even kicks in. That's what Eckhart Tolle meant when he said, stillness is where creativity and solutions are found. Stillness isn't laziness. It's alignment. It's where all the noise filters out and only truth stays. Let me sip this again. Sometimes I joke that coffee is my meditation buddy. It reminds me that stillness doesn't have to look like sitting cross-legged on a mountain. It can look like sitting at your desk, taking one mindful sip. You don't need to escape the world to find peace. You just need to wake up in the one you're already in. Here's a thought. Imagine if everyone on the planet took just 5 minutes a day to practice awareness. No phones, no talking, no agenda, just breathing and noticing. Can you imagine the shift in energy? Fewer arguments, fewer panic-driven choices, more grounded decisions. even the economy would look different. Because aware people make better choices. They buy consciously, work consciously, spend consciously. It's the ripple effect of awareness. It doesn't just make you rich in peace, it makes the world richer in harmony. And I think that's the real mission of Awareness Vibes 2.0. Not to preach, not to tell people what to believe, but to invite everyone to slow down, to tune back into that simple, silent power inside. Because once you taste awareness, you can't untaste it. It changes the flavor of life itself. You know, there's this line from Rumi: when you do things from your soul, you feel a river moving in you, a joy. That's what abundance feels like. Not excitement, joy. A deep, quiet joy that doesn't need an audience. And once you touch that, you realize you don't chase abundance, you allow it. All right, let me pause for a sec. That sip was perfect. Maybe this is a good moment to breathe. If you're listening, take a little pause with me. No rush. Feel the chair beneath you, the air around you, the steady beat of your own heart. That right there, that's wealth in real time. You know what? I think I'll take a small time out just to sit here for a bit, watch the steam rise from my cup, and let all this sink in. Sometimes silence says more than any words can. Let's take that moment, and we'll keep flowing again soon. Yeah, still good. You ever notice how coffee cools down at the same pace as your thoughts do when you slow down? It's like the world matches your rhythm when you finally stop rushing it. Anyway, we've been talking about awareness as real wealth, how it shapes your peace, your choices, even your sense of abundance. But there's another layer to this: how it transforms relationships. Because let's be honest, most of our stress doesn't come from the world itself. It comes from people, or more accurately, from how we perceive people. You know that moment when someone cuts you off in traffic and your mind instantly builds a whole story? Man, what a jerk. Probably late for something, doesn't even care. But if you pause, just one conscious breath, you realize maybe that person's rushing to the hospital. Or maybe they're just lost in thought, like we all are sometimes. Awareness doesn't excuse behavior, but it softens your reaction. And in that softness, you find peace. Eckhart Tolle said something that changed the way I see people. He said, if you completely accept a person as they are, you cease to label them. And that's deep, because most of us don't meet people. We meet our labels of them. We meet the boss who stresses me out, or the friend who never listens, or the partner who doesn't get it. But awareness strips away the label. It lets you see the human again. Let me take a sip here. There was a time when I used to argue to be right. Every conversation felt like a competition. If I could just get the last word, somehow that meant I'd won. But all it ever won me was tension. One day, I caught myself mid-argument, heart racing, mind spinning, and I just stopped. I said, you know what? Maybe you're right. And for the first time, I wasn't surrendering. I was freeing myself. It wasn't about losing. It was about letting go. Because awareness doesn't need to win. It just needs to understand. It's funny, we want people to understand us, but we rarely take time to understand ourselves. We keep reacting out of old wounds, old stories we haven't even looked at in years. Awareness brings light to that. It's like cleaning out a dusty attic. You find boxes labeled resentment, fear, ego, and you realize half of them are empty. You were just carrying them out of habit. And it's not about becoming perfect. It's about becoming aware of your imperfections and making peace with them. Sadhguru once said, the moment you make peace with your imperfections, your journey becomes joyful. That's huge, because awareness isn't about fixing yourself, it's about meeting yourself. You can't grow if you're busy pretending to be complete. Let me stretch a little here. Man, I feel like these conversations are therapy with a side of caffeine. You know what I mean? No copay, just consciousness. But seriously, when you start practicing awareness, it spills into every part of life, especially relationships. You begin to listen differently. Not to reply, not to defend, but to feel. You hear the pauses, the tone, the energy. You start hearing what people mean, not just what they say. And that changes everything. Awareness in relationships is like tuning a guitar. If one string's off, the whole song feels wrong, but a little adjustment, a moment of presence, and harmony returns. That's what happens when you stop reacting and start responding with awareness. You can't control others, but you can always tune your own instrument. And awareness also changes how you see love. Because love isn't supposed to complete you, it's supposed to reflect you. If you're unaware, you'll chase people to fill your emptiness. But when you're aware, you meet people from wholeness. You share, not cling. You connect, not depend. That's conscious love, and it feels peaceful, not addictive. Let me sip again. That's smooth. Coffee and awareness, best duo since yin and yang. You know, I've realized something over the years. The more aware you become, the quieter you get. Not because you have less to say, but because you no longer need to prove anything. You're just okay being here. And when you're okay being here, you become magnetic. People feel that peace and they start matching your frequency. That's real influence, not from words, but from energy. And that's where purpose starts to take shape. Because when you're aware, you begin to sense what really matters. Not what looks good or pays well, but what feels true. And once you start walking that path, life begins to cooperate. Alan Watts said, "When you stop trying to control the world, you discover it's been helping you all along." And I found that to be so true. When I stopped chasing, stopped overplanning, and started trusting, things aligned. The right people, the right ideas, the right timing, it all started flowing. Not perfectly, but peacefully. So yeah, awareness changes relationships, but it also changes your relationship with life itself. You stop seeing it as something to survive and start experiencing it as something to explore. Every moment becomes a classroom, every silence a teacher, every challenge a mirror. And when you live like that, you realize you've already been rich all along. Let me take one last sip here. I think I might take a little time out. Just sit here with this last bit of coffee, watch the world move outside the window, and not think about anything for a few minutes. Because awareness isn't found in talking about it. It's found in the quiet that follows. So yeah, maybe I'll let the silence speak for a bit. You should try it too. Just be still for a moment. You'll be amazed how loud peace can be when you finally listen.